The sun ascended lazily over the rooftops of Hayes' mansion, its golden rays slipping through the elegant silk curtains of Sophia Hayes' room. The young heiress stirred restlessly beneath the sheets, determined to ignore the persistent knocking at her door. "Sophia. Sophia. Wake up this instant. Your stepmother wants to see you in the study immediately," came the housekeeper's sharp voice reverberating through the quiet space. Sophia groaned, burying her face deeper into her plush pillow. At 25, her behavior still bore the defiance of a rebellious teenager, a reality that exasperated her stepmother, Lily Hayes, endlessly. Letting out a resigned sigh, Sophia sat up slowly, her cascading dark hair framing her face. I'm coming," she muttered, her voice heavy with reluctance as she dragged herself towards the bathroom. As she prepared for the day, an inexplicable wave of unease settled over her. Summons to Lily's study were never a good omen. Since her father, Richard Hayes, had passed 3 years prior, the relationship between stepmother and stepdaughter had disintegrated into a constant battle of icy glares and razor-sharp words. Minutes later, Sophia stood before the heavy oak door that led to the study. She inhaled deeply before knocking softly. "Come in," Lily's clipped voice called from within. Sophia entered, her eyes immediately falling on the poised figure of her stepmother. Lily, now in her 50s, was still strikingly beautiful, her platinum blonde hair tightly coiffed and her piercing blue eyes fixed intently on Sophia. "Sit down, Sophia," Lily commanded, gesturing to the chair in front of the desk. Sophia complied, crossing her legs and arching an eyebrow in mock defiance. "What is it now, Lily? Did the gardeners report me for trampling the roses again?" Lily's lips tightened into a thin line, disregarding Sophia's sarcasm. "It's time we discussed your future, Sophia. You've been living like a spoiled child for far too long. It's time you assume some responsibility." Sophia let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Responsibility? You mean the companies my father left me, which you run as if they were yours?" Lily's icy blue eyes glinted dangerously. "Those companies need a competent and mature leader, and you, my dear, are anything but." Leaning forward, Sophia's brown eyes burned with defiance. "And who decides that? I'm the rightful heir. Those companies are mine by law and by right." Lily rose slowly, circling the desk until she loomed over Sophia. "Heir?" she said, her voice laced with mockery. "That's an interesting choice of words. Have you ever wondered why you don't resemble your father in the slightest?" Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "What are you implying?" Lily's lips curved into a cold, calculating smile. "Oh, nothing of importance," she replied airily. "I just wonder if you truly understand your place in this family." Before Sophia could respond, Lily pressed on. "But that's not why I called you here today. I've made a decision about your future. Sophia, it's time for you to get married." Sophia shot to her feet, her eyes wide with shock. "What? Have you lost your mind? You can't make that decision for me." Lily's tone remained calm, yet unwavering. "Oh, but I can. According to your father's will, I'm your legal guardian until you turn 30. That gives me the authority to make decisions about your welfare, and I've determined that you need a husband, someone who will teach you the values of hard work and humility." Backing away in disbelief, Sophia shook her head. "You can't do this. I won't let you." Lily stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "You can fight me all you want, but remember this, I hold the power to make your life utterly miserable. Do you truly want to test me?" A knock at the door cut through the tense silence. "Come in," Lily called, her gaze never leaving Sophia. The door opened to reveal a man in his early 30s, clad in clean but simple clothes. His tousled brown hair framed a face shadowed by days of stubble, but his most striking feature was his intense, emerald green eyes. "Ah, John." Right on time, Lily purred, her voice now dripping with false sweetness. "Sophia, let me introduce you to John Collins, your future husband." Sophia felt her world tilt on its axis. Her eyes darted between Lily and the stranger before her. John seemed equally stunned, his green eyes wide with surprise. "This has to be a joke," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily's smile was frosty and unyielding. "Not at all, dear. John is an honest, hard-working man. He owns a small farm outside the city. I believe he'll be a perfect influence for you." John stepped forward hesitantly, extending a hand roughened by years of labor. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Hayes," he said, his voice deep and gentle. Sophia ignored the gesture, her fury turning toward Lily. You can't possibly expect me to marry a farmer. This is absurd. Lily's gaze hardened. Watch your words, Sophia. John is a respectable and diligent man, exactly what you need to straighten out your reckless ways. John, visibly uncomfortable with the situation, withdrew his hand. His face betrayed a shadow of hurt, but he remained composed. Sophia clenched her fists, her voice trembling with rage. I refuse. Do you hear me? I will not be a pawn in your schemes. But as Lily's calculating smile deepened, Sophia knew this battle had only just begun. Watch your words, Sophia, Lily Hayes warned, her tone slicing through the tension like a blade. John is a respectable and hardworking man. He's exactly what you need to get your life on the right track. John Collins stood stiffly, his calloused hand slowly retreating as a flicker of pain crossed his face at Sophia's clear rejection. Mrs. Hayes, I'm confused. I was under the impression this meeting was about discussing a loan for my farm, he said, his voice low but steady. Lily turned to him, her expression softening into a carefully orchestrated smile. Oh, John, this arrangement is far better than a simple loan. By marrying Sophia, you'll gain access to resources beyond your wildest imagination. All I ask is that you help her grow into a responsible and grounded woman. Sophia felt her breath hitch as the surreal weight of the situation bore down on her. It was as though she were trapped in a waking nightmare. You can't make decisions like this for me. I won't allow it, she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. Lily stepped closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper meant only for Sophia. Think carefully, my dear. If you refuse, I may be forced to ask uncomfortable questions about your claim to the Hayes estate. Do you really want to risk losing everything your father built for you? The color drained from Sophia's face. What did Lily know? Could there be some truth to the venomous insinuations? Her mind spiraled with doubt, leaving her momentarily paralyzed. Unaware of the private conversation, John shifted uneasily, clearly struggling with his own discomfort. Mrs. Hayes, I mean no disrespect, but I can't agree to this. I barely know your daughter, and… Nonsense, Lily interjected sharply, waving away his protests. You'll have plenty of time to acquaint yourselves after the wedding. It's set for 1 month from now. A month? Sophia exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief as the fog of her thoughts lifted. This is absurd. I refuse to entertain this madness for another second. Turning on her heel, she stormed toward the door, her heart pounding with outrage. But before she could escape, Lily's iron grip clamped down on her arm, her words laced with quiet menace. Think very carefully, Sophia. Everything is at stake here, and you know it. Sophia yanked her arm free and fled the study, her thoughts racing as she left behind a bewildered John and an infuriatingly smug Lily. The weeks that followed blurred into a haze of heated arguments and mounting frustration. Sophia resisted with all the strength she could muster, but Lily had meticulously positioned herself to win this battle. Using veiled threats, emotional manipulation, and the legal authority granted by Richard Hayes's will, Lily had trapped her stepdaughter in a web of coercion. John, though an unwilling participant in the charade, made several attempts to bridge the chasm between them. Each time, however, Sophia avoided him as though he were the embodiment of her worst fears. To her, John represented everything she despised about the situation: her stolen freedom, Lily's betrayal, and a future she never envisioned for herself. As the fateful wedding day loomed closer, despair wrapped itself around Sophia like a heavy cloak. She sought legal advice, hoping to uncover some way to free herself from Lily's grasp. Yet every effort proved futile. Lily had been ruthlessly thorough in reshaping Richard's will to consolidate her power, leaving Sophia legally bound to her stepmother's authority until her 30th birthday. Each passing day felt heavier than the last. For Sophia, the walls of Hayes Mansion, once a symbol of her family's legacy, now felt like the confines of a gilded cage. She was a pawn in Lily's calculated game, and the stakes had never been higher. The night before the wedding, Sophia Hayes sat alone in her room, staring out at the sprawling gardens of Hayes Mansion. The soft glow of moonlight illuminated the manicured hedges and fountains below, but her gaze was distant, unfocused. Silent tears streaked her cheeks as the weight of the life she was about to leave behind pressed heavily on her chest. A gentle knock at the door startled her. She quickly wiped her face with trembling hands. "Come in," she said, her voice barely steady. To her surprise, it was John Collins. He stood hesitantly in the doorway, looking as though he didn't belong amidst the room's luxurious decor. His rough, work-worn hands nervously twisted the hat he carried, a stark contrast to the polished surroundings. "Miss Hayes," he began, his voice low and unsteady, yet sincere. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I felt I needed to talk to you before tomorrow." Sophia crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her guard firmly in place. "What is it you want, Mr. Collins?" she asked sharply. "Have you come to boast about your good fortune? To celebrate marrying into a wealthy family?" John shook his head, his expression pained. "No, nothing like that. I came to say, I'm sorry. I never wanted any of this," he said softly, his words heavy with regret. Her tone sharpened further, laced with bitterness. "Then why did you agree to it? Why go along with my stepmother's absurd scheme?" John let out a long, weary sigh and looked down at his hands. "Because I didn't have a choice," he admitted. "Lily, she threatened to take my farm. It's everything I have, everything that's left of." He trailed off, his voice faltering as though he couldn't bear to finish the thought. Sophia's anger faltered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. Despite herself, she leaned in slightly. "Everything that's left of what?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. John shook his head again, brushing the question aside. "It doesn't matter," he said firmly. "What matters is that I understand how trapped you feel. I'm in the same boat. Neither of us wanted this." For the first time since meeting him, Sophia truly looked at John. His green eyes held a quiet honesty and his posture betrayed exhaustion. He wasn't the antagonist she had painted him to be in her mind. He was, like her, a pawn in Lily's manipulative game. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, her voice tinged with despair. John took a cautious step closer, his tone resolute yet gentle. "I don't know, Miss Hayes. But maybe, if we work together, we can figure something out. We're stronger that way." Sophia blinked at him, surprised by the determination in his voice. For the first time in weeks, a small flicker of hope stirred within her. "Maybe," she murmured, allowing a faint smile to touch her lips. The wedding day dawned under a gray sky, clouds heavy with unstrain, mirroring the somber mood of the day. The ceremony was a quiet, subdued affair. Lily presided over the event like a queen surveying her subjects, her triumphant smile never wavering. As the priest spoke the binding words, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Sophia felt something inside her break. A part of her spirit, untamed and fierce, seemed to die in that moment. Yet as her gaze met John's, she saw compassion in his eyes. It was a fragile lifeline, reminding her that she wasn't entirely alone in this ordeal. That same afternoon, without even a moment to process the surreal events, Sophia found herself climbing into John's battered pickup truck, her meticulously packed suitcases, brimming with designer clothes and elegant jewelry, looked out of place in the worn, dusty vehicle. As the truck pulled away from Hayes' mansion, Sophia glanced in the side mirror. There, at the entrance, stood Lily Hayes, her triumphant smile visible even as the distance grew. It was a look that both infuriated and galvanized Sophia. In that instant, she made a silent vow one day she would return to reclaim what was rightfully hers. By the time they arrived at Hayes Collins Farm, the sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson. The farm, though modest, radiated a quiet charm. A two-story wooden house stood surrounded by cultivated fields, with a small barn off to the side. To Sophia, who had known only the grandeur of Hayes Mansion, the scene felt almost surreal, like stepping into a rustic painting. "Welcome to your new home," John said quietly, his voice tinged with both nervousness and pride. Sophia stepped out of the truck, her designer heels sinking slightly into the loose dirt. She looked around, her emotions a chaotic mix of resentment, sadness, and an unexpected sense of intrigue. The simplicity of the farm was foreign to her, yet there was something about the peaceful setting that tugged faintly at her heart. "It's different," she said finally, her voice guarded but honest. As John Collins unloaded the suitcases from the truck, Sophia Hayes took tentative steps around the property, her gaze wandering over the unfamiliar surroundings. The fresh scent of damp soil and grass filled the air, a stark contrast to the polished leather and rare perfumes of Hayes Mansion. In the distance, she heard the gentle mooing of cows and the occasional clucking of chickens, sounds foreign yet oddly grounding. John glanced at her, a faint smile crossing his face. "I know it's not what you're used to," he said, his tone reassuring. "But I promise this place has a charm of its own." Sophia nodded wordlessly. Her mind was too overwhelmed to form a response. The simplicity of the farm was miles apart from the grandeur of her past life, and she wasn't yet sure how to reconcile the two. "Do you want to go inside?" John's voice broke her train of thought. "You must be tired after the trip." With a slight nod, she followed him into the house. Inside, the space was modest but welcoming. Worn wooden furniture was arranged with care, floral curtains softened the light through the windows, and a stone fireplace dominated the cozy main room. It was a home built with practicality and a touch of love, though nothing close to the opulence she was used to. "Your room is upstairs," John said, gesturing toward a narrow staircase. "I've prepared it for you. I hope it's comfortable." Sophia climbed the stairs, with John carrying her luggage behind her. The room was quaint and tidy, nothing like the sprawling suite she had left behind. A bed with a handmade quilt, an oak wardrobe, and a small desk by the window made up its furnishings. It was plain but sincere, just like the man who had brought her here. "I'll leave you to settle in," John said, setting the suitcases gently by the door. "If you need anything, I'll be downstairs." As the door clicked shut behind him, Sophia sank onto the bed. The emotions she had been holding at bay all day came crashing down, and tears flowed freely. She mourned for the life she had left behind, the injustice of her stepmother's betrayal, and the terrifying uncertainty of her future. Downstairs, John moved about the kitchen with restless energy. Preparing a simple dinner gave him something to focus on, but his thoughts remained heavy. He had never imagined himself in this position, married under duress to a woman who clearly resented him. The weight of guilt gnawed at him. He hadn't wanted this for either of them. The house was quiet that evening, the silence thick with unspoken thoughts and unresolved tension. Sophia didn't come down for dinner, and John didn't dare disturb her. They spent their first night as husband and wife, separated by a wooden floor, worlds apart despite their shared roof. In the days that followed, adjustments came hard for both of them. Sophia, accustomed to a life of ease, now faced the demands of a working farm. The simplest household tasks baffled her, and farm work seemed an insurmountable mountain. John tried his best to be patient, but her inexperience often tested his resolve. One crisp morning, a week after Sophia arrived, she was awakened by raised voices outside. Peeking through the window, she saw John engaged in a heated argument with a suited man holding a briefcase. Concerned, she hurried to dress and stepped outside just as the man climbed into his car and drove away, leaving John standing there with a troubled expression. "What was that about?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and concern. John hesitated, his gaze shifting between her and the ground as though debating whether to speak. Finally, he sighed deeply. "It was the bank," he admitted. "They're threatening to foreclose on the farm if I don't pay the overdue balance by the end of the month." Sophia felt a pang of guilt. She had been so wrapped up in her own pain that she hadn't considered what burdens John might be carrying. "How much do you owe?" she asked, surprising both herself and John with her interest. "More than I can cover," he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Last year's harvest was poor, and the prices aren't enough to make up for it." Sophia bit her lip, her mind racing. Though she had lived her entire life surrounded by wealth, she had never truly understood the struggles of making ends meet. Seeing John, a man who toiled endlessly to keep this land alive, on the brink of losing it all, stirred something unexpected within her, a desire to help. "Maybe I can help," she said hesitantly. "I don't know much about farming, but I understand finances. I could look at the books, see if there's anything we can do." John blinked at her, surprised by the offer. Slowly, a glimmer of hope lit his features. "You'd really do that?" he asked. "I thought you hated everything about this place." Sophia shrugged, slightly uncomfortable under his grateful gaze. "I suppose if I'm stuck here, I might as well be useful." That afternoon, she dove into the farm's account books. To her own amazement, she found herself absorbed by the challenge. Numbers, once meaningless columns in her previous life, now became puzzles with real stakes. Meanwhile, John explained the intricacies of farming, the risks, the cycles, the delicate balance of nature and hard work. As they worked side by side, the tension between them began to ease, replaced by a mutual respect neither had anticipated. One evening, over a quiet dinner, Sophia finally broached a question that had lingered in her mind. "John," she began cautiously, "why did you agree to this marriage? I know my stepmother threatened you, but wasn't there another way?" John put down his fork, his expression heavy with memories. "This farm is all I have left of my parents," he said quietly. "They built it from nothing, and when they passed, I swore I'd keep it alive. Lily's offer, it was the only way to keep that promise. Sophia's heart ached at the raw honesty in his voice. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know." He shook his head. "You have nothing to apologize for, but thank you for understanding." A silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace. Then John asked a question of his own. "What did Lily mean when she said you weren't really part of the family?" Sophia's breath caught. The fear she had been burying rose to the surface. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm afraid to find out." Reaching across the table, John placed his hand over hers, his grip steady and reassuring. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he said firmly. "You're not alone in this." For the first time in what felt like forever, Sophia felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, together they could carve a new path forward. Lily Hayes paced the grand study of Hayes Mansion, a glass of crimson wine glinting in her hand as her sharp heels clicked against the polished floor. Her plans were meticulously set into motion, but a faint unease tugged at her mind. Underestimating Sophia Hayes had been a mistake before, and it wasn't one she intended to repeat. She picked up her phone and barked a cold, no-nonsense order. "Keep an eye on the farm," she commanded. "I want to know every move Sophia and that farmer make. Prepare the documents we discussed. It's time to move to the next phase." Ending the call with a curt gesture, her gaze wandered to the portrait of her late husband, Richard Hayes, hanging over the mantel. "I'm sorry, darling," she murmured, her voice dripping with bitterness. "But I can't let your precious adopted daughter take what belongs to me." Raising her glass, a cold smile crept across her face. The game was only beginning, and Lily was determined to emerge victorious no matter the cost. The seasons shifted at Hayes Collins Farm, and with them, so did Sophia Hayes. Months had passed, transforming her from a reluctant participant into someone who found quiet pride in the simplicity of her new life. What once seemed torturous early mornings and labor-intensive work now gave her a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced in her pampered existence at Hayes Mansion. One crisp October morning, Sophia rose before dawn, a habit she had come to embrace. She donned jeans and a flannel shirt, practical attire she once would have scoffed at. Descending the wooden stairs, she found John Collins seated at the kitchen table, his shoulders tense as he studied a pile of papers. "John, is something wrong?" she asked softly, concern threading her voice. He startled slightly but managed a weak smile. "Sophia, I didn't hear you come down." "It's nothing, really. Just some bills." Unconvinced, Sophia crossed the room and reached for the stack of papers. "Let me see," she insisted, her tone gentle but firm. John hesitated before surrendering the documents. Sophia's brow furrowed as she scanned the overdue notices, foreclosure threats, and a rejection letter from the bank. "John, why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" she demanded, frustration and worry mingling in her voice. Running a hand through his tousled hair, he sighed. "I didn't want to burden you. You've already had so much to adapt to. These are my problems, not yours." Sophia's heart ached at his quiet stubbornness. "I thought we agreed we were in this together," she said firmly. "Your problems are mine now, whether you like it or not." His defenses softened and a small, weary smile touched his lips. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just not used to sharing this load with anyone." Sophia nodded, her determination solidifying. "Then let's share it now. Tell me everything. I need to know exactly what we're facing." As dawn's light crept through the windows, John laid bare the harsh realities of the farm's finances. Poor harvests, plummeting crop prices, and rising debts had pushed him to the brink of losing the farm. The bank had refused more loans, and even suppliers were demanding upfront payments. Sophia listened intently, her mind racing with possibilities. Suddenly, an idea took root. "John," she interrupted, her voice laced with urgency, "have you ever considered diversifying?" He tilted his head, curious. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward, her eyes bright with conviction. "Sustainable agriculture. Organic products. There's a growing demand and the margins are higher. We could try it on a small portion of the land." John frowned slightly. "That sounds risky. Changing the way we've done things for generations." "The world is changing," Sophia countered. "We have to change with it if we want to survive. It doesn't have to be all at once. We can start small and see where it goes." As they talked, the rising sun bathed the room in golden light, illuminating their hopeful expressions. For the first time, they worked as partners, combining her sharp financial instincts with his deep knowledge of the land. The synergy was unexpected but undeniably powerful. Back at Hayes Mansion, Lily Hayes prepared to strike her next blow. In her study, she reviewed documents with her lawyer, Roberts, a man whose stern demeanor masked his growing discomfort. "Are you certain you want to proceed?" Roberts asked, his tone laden with caution. "Once this petition is filed, there's no going back." Lily's eyes gleamed with icy determination. "I've never been more certain. Sophia's had her fun on that miserable farm, but it's time she understands Hayes Enterprises belongs to me." Roberts nodded reluctantly. "Very well. I'll file the petition tomorrow. The evidence you've provided makes her case weak. I doubt she'll stand a chance." A slow, triumphant smile spread across Lily's face. "Good. And remember, this stays between us. No leaks until it's too late for her to fight back." As Roberts gathered his briefcase and prepared to leave, Lily Hayes stood and drifted toward the large window overlooking the meticulously manicured gardens of Hayes Mansion. Her eyes lingered on the scene, but her thoughts traveled far into the past, to the pivotal moments that had brought her to this point. She recalled the day she first met Richard Hayes, Sophia's father. Ambition coursed through her veins even then. A young, determined woman working as his personal assistant, Richard was magnetic, charming, and commanding, a man whose power seemed to radiate effortlessly. Lily had convinced herself it was love, but deep down, she knew better. It wasn't Richard she loved, it was the life he represented, the wealth, the influence, the unshakable stature in society. When Richard proposed marriage after his first wife's passing, Lily saw it as her golden ticket to ascend the social ladder and secure a future she had always dreamed of. What she hadn't anticipated, however, was Sophia. At just 5 years old, the child became an unyielding reminder that Lily would never hold first place in Richard's heart. As the years passed, Lily watched the bond between father and daughter deepen. Richard's affection for Sophia was evident, his plans to leave Hayes Enterprises entirely to her crystal clear. Jealousy and bitterness festered in Lily, each loving glance Richard cast at Sophia further fueling her resentment. When Richard died unexpectedly, maiming Sophia as the sole heir, Lily's bitterness hardened into resolve. She vowed to do whatever it took to claim what she believed should have been hers. The Hayes fortune, the empire, it all belonged to her, not an adopted girl who had never earned it. The sharp chime of her phone interrupted her dark reflections, pulling her back to the present. It was a message from her informant in the nearby town. Sophia and John had been spotted at the local agricultural cooperative, discussing what appeared to be new farming methods. Lily's brow furrowed as frustration surged within her. This wasn't the outcome she had anticipated. Sophia should have been drowning in misery, not adapting and thriving. For a fleeting moment, a thread of doubt crept in. Had she underestimated her stepdaughter's resilience? She dismissed the thought as quickly as it came, shaking her head. No, it was irrelevant. With Robert set to file the petition tomorrow, Sophia's world would soon collapse. The farm, the inheritance, everything would slip through her stepdaughter's grasp, leaving her with nothing. "Enjoy your little country fantasy while it lasts," my dear, Lily murmured under her breath, a cold smile tugging at her lips. "Because soon, everything you cherish will come crashing down." The venom in her tone reflected the deep well of bitterness she had carried for years. The game was far from over, but Lily knew she was playing to win, regardless of the cost. At the Hayes Collins farm, blissfully unaware of Lily Hayes' scheming, Sophia Hayes and John Collins spent the remainder of their day focused on their burgeoning project. They walked the property together, examining various plots of land, weighing which would be best suited for their organic farming experiment. As the sun dipped below the horizon, splashing the sky with vibrant hues of orange and pink, they settled on the porch, weary but satisfied. The day's accomplishments left them with a shared sense of purpose. "You know," John began, his voice carrying a hint of both admiration and gratitude, "when you first came here, I never thought you'd become such an essential part of this farm. Thank you, Sophia, for not giving up and for helping me see things in a completely new light." Sophia felt her cheeks warm under John's earnest gaze. "And thank you, John, for your patience, for teaching me so much. I never imagined I'd say this, but I'm glad to be here." A comfortable silence fell between them as their eyes met, a quiet understanding building in the unspoken space. Without realizing it, John leaned forward, his movement tentative but sincere. Sophia's breath caught, her heart pounding against her ribs as anticipation filled the air. Before the moment could reach its peak, the sound of an approaching vehicle shattered the stillness. Startled, they quickly pulled away, an air of nervousness between them like teenagers caught red-handed. "Are we expecting anyone?" Sophia asked, her voice trying to mask her fluttering emotions. John frowned, standing to get a better look. "Not that I know of." Together, they walked toward the front of the house, where a sleek black car rolled to a halt. Sophia's chest tightened as the passenger door opened, revealing a figure she recognized all too well. "Lily," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. Lily Hayes, impeccably dressed in a sharp designer suit, strode toward them with deliberate steps. Her expression was one of practiced charm, but the glint in her eyes betrayed her malice. "Sophia, darling," she cooed, her voice a sickly sweet mixture of mockery and condescension. "Is that any way to greet your dear stepmother?" Sophia instinctively stepped in front of John, shielding him with her presence. "What are you doing here, Lily?" Lily's smile widened, a sinister curl that made Sophia's skin crawl. "Oh dear. Is that the gratitude I get for coming all this way? Especially when I've brought such enlightening news." Sophia felt John's reassuring hand at her back, a silent message of solidarity. Drawing strength from his presence, she straightened her posture, her tone calm yet resolute. "What news?" she asked, though unease simmered beneath her steady demeanor. Reaching into her purse, Lily produced an envelope, waving it as though it were a prized possession. "It's high time you learned the truth about your past, Sophia. And your future." As the last rays of the sun cast an ominous red glow over the scene, Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. Whatever lay inside that envelope, she knew would change her world irrevocably. An oppressive silence hung in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Sophia's eyes were locked on the envelope, her mind racing with possibilities, each one more foreboding than the last. "What is that?" she finally managed, her voice quivering with uncertainty. Lily's calculating grin grew colder. "Oh, darling. Why don't we step inside and discuss this like the family we are? After all, that's what families do, isn't it?" Sophia clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to be led into a trap. "Whatever you have to say, Lily, you can say it right here." Lily arched a perfectly manicured brow, her amusement thinly veiling her disdain. "As you wish." Always so headstrong with slow, deliberate movements, she opened the envelope and withdrew a stack of papers. "You know," Lily began with feigned casualness, "I always wondered why you didn't resemble Richard. Turns out there's a very logical reason for that." Sophia's pulse quickened. "What are you talking about?" Lily extended the documents, her tone tinged with mock pity. "You're adopted, Sophia. Richard brought you home from an orphanage when you were just a baby. These are the papers to prove it." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, a thunderous silence enveloping them. Sophia reached out with trembling hands, taking the papers and scanning their contents. Each word seemed to echo in her mind, confirming Lily's cruel revelation. This can't be true," Sophia whispered, her voice breaking as the ground beneath her seemed to shift. Lily's laugh was devoid of warmth. "Oh, but it is. And that's not all. You see, according to inheritance laws, an adopted child doesn't automatically have the same rights as a biological one, unless explicitly stated in the will. And wouldn't you know it? Your dear father forgot to make that little adjustment." Sophia's breath caught, her fingers tightening around the papers as Lily's words cut deep. Every memory, every certainty she thought she had, now teetered on the brink of collapse. Sophia Hayes looked up from the documents, her shock quickly giving way to a searing anger. "What are you saying, Lily?" she demanded, her voice trembling but fierce. Lily Hayes's lips curled into a cold, triumphant smile. "I'm saying, dear Sophia, that you have no legal claim to the Hayes fortune. Everything the business is, the estates now belongs to me." John Collins stepped forward protectively, positioning himself beside Sophia. "That's impossible. Richard Hayes adored Sophia. Everyone knew that. There's no way he would let something like this happen," he argued, his voice steady with indignation. Lily turned her piercing gaze toward John, her malice barely concealed. "Ah, the noble farmer, swooping in to save the damsel. How quaint," she sneered. But love, Mr. Collins, is irrelevant in the face of the law. This morning I filed a petition to nullify Richard's will. In just a few weeks it will all officially belong to me. Sophia felt her legs buckle beneath her, but John's strong arms steadied her before she could collapse. Why, she whispered, her voice raw with pain. Why do this now, Lily? Why take everything from me? Lily leaned in closer, her tone dripping with venom. Because you were never anything but a thorn in my side, a constant reminder that no matter how hard I tried, I could never be first in Richard's heart. But now, finally, I'll have everything that should have been mine. With a final, icy glare, Lily pivoted and strode toward her waiting car. Just before sliding into the back seat, she paused and turned. Oh, and one more thing. The mortgage on this charming little farm? It's in my name now, too. You have 1 week to vacate. Goodbye, darling. The roar of the engine faded into the distance, leaving behind a swirl of dust and 2 shattered hearts. Sophia crumpled into John's arms, her sobs breaking the oppressive silence. John held her tightly, saying nothing as he tried to process the gravity of what had just transpired. The days that followed were a blur of desperation and heartbreak. Sophia and John sought every possible avenue to fight Lily's ruthless actions. They met with lawyers, scoured old records, and clung to even the faintest glimmers of hope. Yet with each rejection, Sophia's despair deepened. Her sense of identity, already shaken by the revelation of her adoption, now crumbled under the weight of impending loss. One evening, Sophia sat on the porch, gazing up at the expanse of stars, their cold brilliance offering little comfort. She felt utterly adrift, untethered from the life she once knew. John joined her, settling beside her in quiet solidarity. I always knew Lily hated me, Sophia murmured after a long pause, but I never thought she would go to these lengths. John reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. I'm so sorry, Sophia, he said softly. I wish I could do more. Sophia turned to him, a faint, bittersweet smile crossing her lips. You've done more than you know, John. Without you, I don't think I could have endured any of this. Their eyes met, and for a moment the weight of the world seemed to lift. Slowly, tentatively, they leaned toward one another. When their lips met, the kiss was tender, filled with unspoken emotions, comfort, understanding, and a fragile yet growing hope. As they pulled apart, Sophia rested her head on John's shoulder. What do we do now, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. John wrapped his arms around her protectively. I don't know, he admitted, but whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's a promise. Back at the Hayes mansion, Lily reveled in her apparent triumph, surrounded by the opulence she believed was finally hers to claim. A glass of wine in hand, she basked in the glow of her supposed victory, her confidence soaring. Her celebration was interrupted by the shrill ring of her phone. Answering it with mild annoyance, her expression quickly darkened as she listened to the voice on the other end. Mrs. Hayes, said Roberts, her lawyer, his tone unusually strained. We have a complication. Lily's grip on the phone tightened. What kind of complication, she snapped. There's been an objection filed against our petition, Roberts explained. Someone has presented evidence that Richard's will specifically ensured Sophia's inheritance, regardless of her adoption status. Lily's heart pounded, an icy dread coursing through her veins. Who, she demanded. Who is responsible for this? Roberts hesitated before answering. Olivia Lewis, he said finally. Richard's former secretary. The name hit Lily like a physical blow. Olivia Lewis, a ghost from the past she thought she had silenced long ago. That's impossible, Lily hissed, her voice trembling. She can't. I'm afraid she can, Roberts replied gravely. And there's more. She claims to have evidence of other indiscretions, things that could lead to serious legal consequences for both of us. Panic flashed across Lily's face as the enormity of the situation sank in. Years of scheming, deceit, and manipulation were teetering on the brink of exposure. Find her, Lily ordered, her voice low but venomous. Find her and make sure she doesn't say another word. As she ended the call, Lily stared at Richard Hayes's portrait hanging above the fireplace. For the first time in years, the steely resolve in her eyes faltered, replaced by genuine fear. I won't let it all slip away, she muttered under her breath. her fists clenched. Not now, not when I'm so close. Miles away, in a small apartment nestled within the city, Olivia Lewis stood by the window clutching a stack of weathered documents. Her gaze swept over the dimly lit skyline as a mixture of apprehension and resolve clouded her expression. Years of silence and guilt had weighed on her. But now, the time had come to face the truth she had concealed for far too long. "It's time," Richard Olivia whispered, as though speaking to a long-lost confidant. "Your daughter deserves to know everything." As the night unfurled, the web of fate began to tighten. Sophia Hayes, grappling with the revelation of her adoption and the loss of everything familiar, stood at a precipice. John Collins, steadfast and determined, vowed to protect the woman he had come to love despite the odds. Meanwhile, Lily Hayes clung to the empire she had built upon lies, desperate to keep her secrets hidden. And Olivia, the keeper of truths that could unravel everything, prepared to expose it all. A storm was on the horizon, one that would alter all their lives forever. The morning broke under a shroud of gray skies, rain tapping steadily against the roof of the Hayes Collins farmhouse. The dreary weather mirrored the turmoil brewing within Sophia Hayes's heart. She awoke with swollen eyes, her sleep fractured by restless dreams and lingering fears. Next to her, John lay peacefully, his arm draped protectively around her, unaware of the storm swirling within her. Sophia studied his face, a mixture of gratitude and guilt tugging at her. In the chaos, John had become her anchor. But how long could they sustain the fragile peace they had created? Careful not to disturb him, she slipped out of bed and made her way to the kitchen. As she brewed coffee, her thoughts spiraled back to the recent days, the revelation of her adoption, Lily's betrayal, and the threat of losing the farm. The weight of it all pressed down on her, threatening to consume her. The sound of tires crunching on gravel pulled her from her thoughts. Frowning, she peered out the window and spotted an unfamiliar taxi coming to a halt. A poised older woman stepped out, her silver hair glinting in the muted light as she surveyed the property with a nostalgic air. Sophia's curiosity mingled with caution as she opened the door. "Can I help you?" Sophia asked, her voice tinged with both politeness and unease. The woman's eyes welled with tears as she gazed at Sophia. "Sophia," she said softly, "you've grown into a remarkable young woman. You're the spitting image of your mother." Sophia stiffened, her breath catching. "Who are you? How do you know my mother?" The woman offered a bittersweet smile. "I'm Olivia Lewis. I worked for your father for many years as his secretary. I've come to tell you the truth, the whole truth." Before Sophia could respond, John appeared, his protective instincts immediately surfacing. "Is everything all right?" he asked, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I think so," Sophia replied, her eyes still locked on Olivia. "Come in. We have a lot to discuss." Meanwhile, in the opulent confines of Hayes Mansion, Lily Hayes paced the floor of her study, frustration radiating from her with every step. She had spent a sleepless night orchestrating every possible way to intercept Olivia before she reached Sophia. "How have you not found her yet?" Lily barked into the phone. "She's a frail old woman, it shouldn't be this difficult." Roberts's voice remained measured on the other end. "We've combed through the city's hotels and public spaces, Mrs. Hayes. There's no trace of her." Slamming the phone down in frustration, Lily poured herself a glass of whiskey. Her once ironclad schemes were now unraveling, and for the first time in years, a pang of panic rippled through her. Back at the farm, Olivia, Sophia, and John sat around the kitchen table. The air was charged with anticipation as Olivia retrieved a thick envelope from her bag and placed it before Sophia. "Everything is here," Olivia began, her voice tinged with weariness. "Letters, photographs, legal documents, proof that Richard intended for you to inherit everything, Sophia, regardless of your adoption." Sophia's hands trembled as she reached for the envelope. "Why now?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why tell me this after all these years?" Lowering her gaze, Olivia confessed, "Fear held me back. Lily is dangerous. After your father passed, she threatened me, made it clear she would ruin me if I ever spoke." John leaned forward. "What changed?" "I'm dying," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "Cancer. I have only months left, and I realized I couldn't carry these secrets to my grave. Sophia deserves the truth. Sophia combed through the documents, her heart pounding as the pieces of her father's love and intentions fell into place. But one revelation made her blood run cold. She killed him, Sophia stammered. Olivia nodded solemnly. Lily poisoned Richard. Slowly, over months. He suspected it toward the end and asked me to investigate, but it was too late. Sophia stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. We need to go to the police, now. John stood by her side, his resolve unwavering. I'm with you, he said. As they prepared to leave, the screech of tires pierced the air. Several black cars barreled up the driveway, their presence unmistakably ominous. It's Lily, Sophia murmured, her voice trembling. She knows. Emily stood firm. Go, she urged. Take the evidence and go to the authorities. I'll hold them off. No, John declared, his voice steady. We won't leave you to face this alone. Sophia nodded, her resolve hardening. We face this together. As a family. As the sleek black cars screeched to a halt outside the Hayes Collins farm, Sophia Hayes, John Collins, and Olivia Lewis braced themselves for the inevitable confrontation. From the lead vehicle, Lily Hayes emerged, her face twisted with rage and her heels striking the gravel like gunshots. You, she spat, her finger trembling as she pointed at Olivia. Traitor! How dare you meddle in my affairs? Sophia stepped forward, her shoulders squared, her voice unwavering. It's over, Lily. We know the truth. All of it. Lily's laughter was sharp and devoid of warmth, a sound that sent chills down the spine. And what do you plan to do, dear? Go running to the authorities. Do you think they'll believe you over me? I'm Lily Hayes, I have influence, power. You are nothing. You're wrong, John interjected, moving to stand firmly beside Sophia. She's Sophia Hayes, the rightful heir to Richard Hayes's legacy, and she has proof of all your crimes. As if on cue, the wail of approaching sirens shattered the tense standoff. Red and blue lights flashed on the horizon, the vehicles drawing closer with each passing second. Lily's confidence faltered, her face paling as she stumbled backward in disbelief. No, she murmured, shaking her head as though to ward off the inevitable. This can't be happening. It's over, Lily Sophia declared, her tone resolute. It's time for you to face justice for everything you've done. The police cars came to a stop, officers stepping out to make the arrest. Lily was escorted away, her desperate protests fading into the distance. In that moment, a weight lifted from Sophia's shoulders. She turned to John and Olivia, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. For standing by me, for helping me uncover the truth. John pulled her into a warm embrace. I'll always be here for you, Sophia. I love you. A smile broke across her face, soft and genuine. I love you too, John. And now I know my home isn't about wealth or mansions. My home is with you here on this farm, in the life we've built together. Olivia, her expression tender, spoke up. Your father would be proud, Sophia. You've faced all of this with such strength and grace. You are, without question, his daughter. The clouds above began to part, the sun casting its golden rays over the farm. It felt like the beginning of something new, something beautiful. Sophia stood silently for a moment, basking in the promise of brighter days ahead. 1 year later, the Hayes Collins farm thrived like never before. With Sophia's sharp financial acumen and John's deep knowledge of the land, the pair transformed the property into a prosperous organic farming enterprise. The once struggling land was now a beacon of innovation and sustainability. The Hayes fortune, now legally Sophia's, became a force for good. She dedicated it to helping struggling family farms regain stability and funding programs that promoted sustainable agricultural practices. It was a testament to how love, trust, and resilience could yield lasting change. Lily Hayes, convicted of her crimes, spent her days in a prison cell. Her empire of lies lay in ruins, and she was left to confront the consequences of her relentless greed. Olivia, though her health declined in the months that followed, passed away surrounded by the love and gratitude of the family she had fought to protect. Her courage in revealing the truth ensured that justice was served, and she found peace in knowing she had made amends. On a bright spring afternoon, under the sprawling oak tree where they had first shared a quiet moment of connection, Sophia and John were married. Friends, family, and farm workers gathered to celebrate the union, their joy echoing through the fields. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink, Sophia surveyed the scene before her. She saw John, the man who had taught her what love truly meant. She saw the farm, now her home and her sanctuary. And she saw a future that was brimming with hope and possibilities. Sophia Hayes, once a reluctant heiress bound by the expectations of others, was now the master of her own destiny, and she wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. In this heartwarming tale of courage, love, and resilience, Sophia Hayes transforms from a reluctant heiress trapped by deception into a woman who reclaims her identity and destiny. Her journey begins with betrayal and loss as she uncovers the shocking truth about her family, her inheritance, and her father's untimely death. With the support of John Collins, a steadfast partner with a heart of gold, and Olivia Lewis, a brave whistleblower determined to right past wrongs, Sophia faces her darkest moments with unwavering determination. Through sheer grit, Sophia and John turn a struggling farm into a thriving enterprise, a symbol of hope and renewal. Together, they prove that love and trust can overcome even the most formidable obstacles. Meanwhile, Lily Hayes, consumed by greed and deception, learns the hard lesson that lies can only take you so far. This story reminds us of the power of perseverance, the importance of uncovering the truth, and the unyielding strength of love. Sophia's triumph isn't just about reclaiming her inheritance, it's about finding her home in the people and values that truly matter. If this story inspired or moved you, let us know in the comments below. What moments touched you the most? How did you feel about Sophia's journey and the choices she made? And don't forget, if you loved this story, please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Your support helps us bring more uplifting and emotional stories like this to life. Let's spread the message of hope, love, and resilience to as many people as possible. Thank you for watching, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts.